Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We're going to give everyone a couple more minutes to hop on. In the meantime, if you want to share in the chat where you're tuning in from, I'm here in New Jersey. And if you're in the part of New Jersey I am, you got a lot of snow the other day. Colorado, Vermont. I mean, I can't complain. I feel like Colorado and Vermont get way more snow than we do. We have another wonderful guest presenter that I'm very excited to introduce in a second. And let me know in the chat, or if you want to just pop on and say hi real quick, if this is your first time coming to Virtual Teaching Kitchen class. If it is, welcome. I'm excited to have you here. This is one of many more classes to come. I love teaching classes. And the virtual ones are fun because you get to do it in your own kitchen if you're cooking along. Or also too, I can reach people from all over instead of just meeting people in New Jersey. Now we have Vermont, Colorado. Someone was from Arizona last class, so it's nice to be able to connect with everyone. All right, so before we get started, I would just like to say hi. I'm Julie Lopez. I am the creator of Virtual Teaching Kitchen. You might know me as on social media as Chef Julie RD, but I created this space to offer cooking classes that add nutrition education. And that is my passion, because when we talk about nutrition, we need to also talk about food and how to cook that food and how to make it taste delicious. So today's topic, every class will have a topic, and it is meal planning and prepping. So before we start though, she's going to do another introduction in her in the presentation part, but if you've been here before, you know that we do some slides of presentation of education, and then we move on to the cooking demo. So all the information in your packet leading up to the class, there were some things to prep ahead of time. So if you didn't yet, it's okay. That's why there's some wiggle room. And you can do it during the presentation piece, so you're ready to go during the cooking portion. So what I need you to do if you're cooking along today is cook your spaghetti squash, and also cut your chicken, and just make sure all your ingredients and equipment are out and ready to go. So Anne, why don't you just say hi real quick so everyone can see your face.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to join you.
Yeah, Anne is another dietitian, and us dietitians need to stick together. And she has a really cool business, which she's going to talk to you about. So I wanted to share with this community as well. So without further ado, let's get started with the slide portion. So just again, to start off with what Virtual Teaching Kitchen is, it's providing free virtual cooking classes with that nutrition education. And my goal is to make it accessible for all. So if you're cooking along with me today, fantastic. I would love to see what you make. If you're watching this to get some inspiration for later, please share what you made. I'd love to see it. You can follow at Virtual Teaching Kitchen. And if you make something, use the hashtag MadeWithVTK so we can share it all over. All right.
Well, hello, everybody. So thank you, Julie, for the introduction. Like she said, my name is Ann Kent, and I am also a registered dietitian. And I created the Peas and Poppy Meal Guides. It's a meal planning app because like Julie said, you can't talk about nutrition unless you talk about cooking. And one of the things that I found both personally and professionally working with clients is that we all know that we should cook at home or that we should eat more vegetables, but it's just hard to get it done. So as you can see that photo on the left, I am a registered dietitian. I love to cook. That's my business, Peas and Happiness. And then in the middle, I have introduced my family. So I got married a couple of years ago and gained a bonus son. And then a couple of years after that, I had a baby, and we added and now toddler to our mix. So the photo on the right is my family now. So I have gone from meal planning as a profession, as like a hobby, to meal planning as an absolute necessity. If any of you have a family, have kids, or just a job and other social events, you know that it is hard to get dinner on the table because you're oftentimes running from one thing to another. So in addition to the meal planning app, I've also developed a meal planning process that I have found works really well if you have a schedule where you find it hard to actually kind of hit where the rubber hits the road, like get the things done that you want to. So that's what I'm really honored and excited to share with you today. You can go to the next slide, Julie. Also, I did want to mention, so this is the app that I developed. This is called the Peas and Hoppy Meal Guides. And if you are interested in getting some more inspiration for what to put on your meal plan, Julie and I have teamed up to give you a free month access to the app. Every week I send a new menu to give you some inspiration so that you're not stuck in the overwhelm of the internet and a million recipes. So I give you some pre-made inspiration, but then you can customize your menu based on the schedule. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So if you would like to try this out and try it out while we're making the meal plan, you can go to my website, peasandhappiness.com/join. I'll put that in the chat and use the code VTK30 to redeem that free month. So we are, like I said, we're talking about meal planning, and I'm super excited to share this recipe. This is actually one of the recipes in the meal planning app. All the recipes that I create and upload to the meal planning app are very vegetable heavy. So this is a great example of how we are spotlighting a vegetable and making it almost like the main portion of the dish. That's what I found was the most challenging when working with clients, and also for myself, and thinking about like a healthy plate, was how to get enough vegetables without like having a salad every day or just having like literally a half plate of vegetables. So incorporating it into the main dish, I found, is a really great way to up your nutrition in a really fun, enjoyable way without getting bored. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so before we jump into the meal planning process, I just wanted to point out what I have found is the reason why most meal plans don't work. It's super common that people come to me and they're like, hey, can you make me a meal plan? And my answer is actually nobody can make a meal plan but you. And here's why. So what oftentimes happens, like the new year, somebody shares their meal plan with you and you're like, yes, I'm so excited. I have the perfect meal plan. It's worked for these people. My friends use it. It's going to work for me. But then the next step, you can hit the next slide, Julie. So you go grocery shopping. You are like on this meal plan. You're going to do it. It's cheaper. You're going to save money. It's very exciting. And then the plan doesn't work with your schedule because something happens, because something unexpected happens, because the meal plan tells you that you're supposed to meal prep on Sundays, but you are at soccer tournaments all day. Something happens when you're actually trying to put this into place. And so what happens is you end up ordering takeout like you planned not to do. And it's so frustrating because you end up buying groceries and then they go to waste. You order out all the things. So in this whole process, if you go to the next slide, Julie, the part that I am focusing on is this step 3, where the plan doesn't work with your schedule, because this is what we really have to overcome if we're going to find something sustainable that's going to work in the long term. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so my secret, which is not actually that secretive, but the secret is to plan your meals around your life. And I actually like to say that in reverse. You can't plan your life around your meals. And I think in the diet culture world we live in, with everybody has an opinion about what you should eat, there's all of these plans that are like, hey, you need to go 0 carb, or you need to go vegan, or you need to do this. There's so many opinions. And if we try to change our whole lifestyle around those, it oftentimes doesn't work, because you still have a job, you still have your kids, you still have all these commitments. And the real secret to finding, to meeting that nutrition and food and life, perfect point, is to start with your schedule and to create a plan that works for you. And that's what we're going to do. So the 3-step process, like I said, it starts with your week. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to plan your week. Then we're going to figure out what to put on your on your meal plan. And then we're going to create your grocery list from that so that you can save a ton of time and money at the store. If in your packet you received the meal planning template, if you did not find that, then you can click on that link in the chat and you can go to the freebies and download this, but it is in your packet of information. If you haven't printed it out, it's okay. You can like take notes on a scratch paper, but this is super helpful because you can actually fill out your entire schedule for the week and post it on your fridge. That's what I do. And then we all know what's going on. Also, you need your personal schedule for this week. And this is where the whole using someone else's plan doesn't work. It's because nobody in the world has your schedule. Only you have that in your Google Calendar. So so grab that wherever you keep that and take it. And then, like I said, if you want some actual inspiration for the week, then you can sign up for the app and use the code VTK30 to get the free month trial. Okay, let's get started. Plan your week. You can, next slide, pretty pictures. Okay, so along the top of this meal plan, there is a space to write the events for the week. Even if you don't have kids, even if you are a single person or a married person and you aren't going to soccer practice, I guarantee that your schedule has stuff on it that means that you're not always going to eat at home. So write down everything that you're doing, whether it's yoga class or a late work meeting or date night is on Tuesday. I don't know, like whatever it is, get your schedule down on paper. From that, you can go to the next slide. We're going to figure out how many people you're going to feed each night. And this is where, again, like if you might be surprised how much this changes, but thinking through who's actually going to be at home on certain nights, when you might have extra people, like for example, we have family dinner usually on Thursdays. And so Aunt Jen comes over and we have an extra eater if we have family visiting, or maybe it's the opposite that, you know, my husband has a work meeting and so it's just me and the toddler at home or whatever. Figure out how many people you're feeding each night. This is super important as you think about managing your food inventory so that you reduce food waste. If you are following along, if you guys want to type in the chat, if anybody is actually like following along, we can pause here, or you can go back to this later and fill this out. So let me know in the chat if you have any opinions. Otherwise, we can keep moving on.
I think that's a really great tip to like really write it out, because there are nights where I'm like, oh yeah, it's not a typical Wednesday. I need to make more food or less food. So that's really smart. I like this little template.
You know, and part of this is reducing the mental load. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. If you've heard of that in the chat, I would love to let you know. But man, yeah, there's a lot to manage. And I found this is such a great communication tool, not just like for you and your spouse, but literally for the whole household. And so often I'm like trying to create the meal plan and then I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, you have this going on, or we're not going to be home this night. There's like things that come up, and it's much nicer to get that all out on paper on like Thursday the week before, instead of like the day before when you're figuring out who's driving what car to what event. So huge, yeah, communication, mental load management. Okay, this is like the meat and potatoes, the what, when, and what to cook. And I actually combine this in the same step because they're so related that we can't separate them. If you go to the next slide, I have a little, this is my equation for figuring out how often to cook. A lot of times when I'm working with people with meal planning, they want to cook more at home. Like their goal is to cook more often at home, which is amazing. The key is to set a realistic goal that is also going to challenge you. And so my formula for figuring out how often you should cook, if your goal is to start cooking more often at home, is to think about the number of times per week that you cook now, and then add 1 to that number. And that's how many cooked meals you should have on your meal plan. This number is often smaller than what people think that they want, but this is what is going to be most realistic. And that is super important when we're talking about actionable goals. So if you go to the next slide, there's a little example. So like, let's say that you're just kind of thinking about, you're like, okay, if I'm being honest, we're eating out a lot and I'm probably cooking at home like twice. So your goal is to cook 3 times this week. That is the max number of cooked meals you're allowed to pick for the week. And even though that seems small, what you do when you have a goal like this is you build your repertoire of easy meals to cook. So if you were to do this for the rest of for an entire year, next year in February, you're going to know how to cook like 52 meals, especially if you challenge yourself to like do one new meal every week or something like that. And you could go from feeling super frustrated or bored with your food to having like this wide variety and being really confident with a lot of stuff. So don't underestimate the power of small attainable goals. This can be really huge. So just add one. All right. So as you're looking at this, now that you have all of the events on the calendar, now you can think through what days you're going to have time to cook and how much energy you're going to cook. I think a lot of times we think about the time, but we forget about the energy. And when I say energy, I mean that throughout the week, some days you're going to have more mental energy and more physical energy than others. For example, I think a lot of people have a lot of energy like at the beginning of the week, and by the end of the week, they're tired from working and tired from all the stuff. For me, it's the opposite. Our weekends seem crazy. And so like Mondays are my day to like recoup, and like Mondays I have low energy. So a lot of times on Mondays and Tuesdays, I will plan for either an easy meal or I will plan to go out to eat. This is one of my biggest tips for creating a sustainable meal plan is to schedule in specific times that you're going to go out to eat. That is going to allow you some flexibility. If something doesn't work out, you can flip-flop the evenings and end up and not waste ingredients. You can just change around the nights of the week instead of like everything has fallen apart. The other thing to think about is the need for leftovers. So there's some nights on this week that, you know, maybe I don't want to go out to eat a ton, but I don't have time to cook. And so planning ahead earlier in the week to have something where we can have leftovers can be super helpful. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so like I said, in those blanks, after you have put down what you want to cook on each of those different days, then think about scheduling the takeout. Think about the leftovers, and I like to do some fend for yourself nights. So that might be whatever they're calling it now, girl dinner or charcuterie or adult Lunchables, whatever, you know, snack for dinner, or maybe it's breakfast for dinner. Maybe you have like an easy night of the week. So think about those as you're creating this. You do not have to cook a fancy meal every night of the week in order to have a nutritious something on your plate. And if you are in the meal guide app, you will find that there are several different types of meals to help you with this rhythm. So on the meal guide, there is always a slow cooker meal and there's always a 30-minute meal. That's super helpful as you're thinking about, am I going to be home right, you know, in time to make dinner, or do I need to have something cooking like in the slow cooker that's going to be ready as soon as we get home? I also include grab and go options, which are either those kind of charcuterie nights, or they are like super fast, throw together less than 30 minutes as well. So those are also really good to include, especially if you're not used to thinking of a meal as like a snack. That can be just like a good visual for getting some ideas there. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so once you have figured out when you're going to eat, when you're going to cook, what you have, then there's a little box for leftovers, and that is to help manage your food inventory. I'm not going to say you're never going to have the science experiment in the back of the fridge. I mean, we all do. I certainly do. But this is super helpful for reducing that. It's another way, again, to communicate with the rest of your family what is available. So they can say that, like, oh, the barbecue chicken has, like, there is leftovers on that night. Like, there's probably barbecue chicken in the fridge that I can pull out. All right, next slide. So now that we've got the cooked meals, let's fill in the blanks for breakfast, lunch, and snacks. As you are creating this, just like I was talking about not overcommitting yourself to cooking too many nights per week, I also really recommend to cook only once per day, unless you have somebody to help clean your kitchen all the time, because otherwise it's just too much. Like it's a lot to think about cooking multiple meals. So instead, I would think about using staples. You know, like for us, our staple is like we have bagels and cream cheese. Like that works really well for my starving 14-year-old who needs a ton of energy to make it through basketball practice. Lunches, you can do the leftovers. Or I have an example on this of mini cracker pizzas and cucumbers. So that's one of like the grab and go meals that I have. They're super fast little things that you can literally take out from the fridge, either throw in the microwave or just throw together. And then snacks, think about like seasonal fruit, think about, you know, to-go yogurt or, you know, you don't have to make everything from scratch in order for this to be nutritious. Okay, so this is the point where we can either pause. I would normally pause, but yes, we don't have to. Oh, yes. And like I said, sorry, if you want to go there. Yes. So like I said, if you want some inspiration, then use that VTK 30. That's going to give you a lot of different ideas. And if you don't like those ideas, then you can sort through our database. We have over 800 recipes that you can choose from, and you can find more 30-minute options, or you can find more slow cooker options. I think it's really helpful to have kind of a container of recipes. One thing that I find, there's this paradox of choice that oftentimes we have too many choices. And so it's hard to make a choice. And we think, oh, I just need more options. But the truth is you actually need less options. You just need the right options. And that's kind of what this app is doing for you. Okay. So we can skip this step if you'd like, so we can keep going, unless you have any thoughts, Julie.
Did anyone print out these handouts? They are in the downloaded packet, and I can resend that again, but it's right in your registration link as well. So print these out and you could start making your own weekly meal plan and utilizing this method.
Yeah, and so also in your handout is a grocery list template. And again, you don't have to use this. You could literally use the back of your meal plan if you want. But the thing that I think is most helpful about this is that you want to organize this by section of the grocery store. That's one of the biggest tips for saving time so that you're not like crisscrossing the grocery store a ton. As you create your grocery list, I always start with the ingredients for each recipe. And as annoying as it is, it can be really helpful to truly write down everything that's in the recipe, because otherwise you might think that you have an ingredient and you actually don't. Or you can go through your list then and then cross off anything that you already have, so you're not buying a ton of extra stuff. So once you've got all the ingredients for the recipes, then I always add those quote unquote staple ingredients. So like for us, it's like bananas because I have a toddler and we need bananas always, or it's yogurt because that's a super easy snack to have. If you go to the next slide, if you do choose to create this meal plan in the app, it actually populates the grocery list for you, which is my personal favorite feature because I hate making grocery lists. But it'll do that for you. And then all you need to do is cross off the ingredients in the app and then you can manually add extra items. So if you have a recipe that's outside of the app, or if you have those staples like we were talking about.
If you populate it on the app, could you actually print it out on a piece of paper?
You can. Yep, great question.
I'm one of those people who I'm like, I can't have my phone out while I'm grocery shopping. There's too much happening. So I need like to manually cross it off.
Yes. Yeah. So if there's like a little 3 dots, you can actually download the entire plan as a PDF. So also if you prefer to cook from paper instead of your phone or iPad, you can do that too. So yes, you can download whichever you want. Well, I'll skip this as well, but if you're watching the replay, then that's a good time to pause. And so that's all. You're done. Yay. If you can take some time to think through that schedule, and then, like I said, think through the time and energy that you're going to have on each day, that's going to help you so much. And one of my favorite tips is, like I said, put that meal plan where everybody can see it. And then once you train everybody to look at the meal plan, you don't have to keep answering the question of what's for dinner, because believe me, I know how annoying that is.
All right, thank you so much. That was fantastic. So thank you, Anne, for that. I love it, because even for me, when Sunday night rolls around, or Sunday during the day, because we usually do our shopping Sunday night, it's like, what are we making for dinner? I hate that question. I hate it so much, because it's like, I have to rethink my whole week. But now having like a plan and writing it down is really helpful. So I hope everyone does take advantage of those 30 days to hop on to the meal guide. Because even just getting a new recipe in your recipe bank, so that can be your go-to for simple and efficient meals. And I love that each week you're getting a 30-minute meal and something in your slow cooker, because those are the set it and forget it kind of meals, or if you're running low on time, we're always looking for that. So during our cooking session today, is anybody cooking along with me? If you are, I can't wait to cook with you. I'm excited. I was really excited to pick this recipe from the meal guide because, like Anne mentioned, all of these recipes are very plant forward. And I think a lot of times when we're trying to add more fruits and veggies to our meals, we often see that plate method, which I even talked about in our other class, that try to make half your plate fruits and veggies, but sometimes that's overwhelming to look at. So why don't we incorporate them into the whole dish, and then it's more of a wholesome meal. So spaghetti squash tetrazzini, we are using our spaghetti squash as the base, and it's fun because you can scrape it out, and which we're going to do later, and create those noodles in that way. If you are slowly transitioning, like I've mentioned in other classes, you can always go half and half. You never have to follow a recipe exactly. A recipe is just a guide, it's not a mandate. So if you wanted to add like half pasta, half spaghetti squash, and slowly transition to more of that full plate of spaghetti squash, then go for it there. So if you're cooking along with me, again, there was a couple things to prep. So cooking your spaghetti squash, and I have a pound of chicken that I already cut into bite-sized pieces. And I'm just going to give this a little bit of salt and pepper. We always want to season our protein before we cook it. So with this, I am going to always turn on my pan and make sure my pan is nice and hot. Just 1 sec, I'm just gonna put on my little fan here so no smoke goes into the camera angle. So this could be chicken, maybe you want to do shrimp, maybe you don't want to do chicken at all, just skip this step. All of the recipes too in the meal guide have really great substitution ideas as well. So if you want to make a vegetarian, maybe do double the amount of mushrooms that we're going to do, or also add some beans. Chickpeas I really like because they're more meaty, that would pair really well. So as a reminder, cooking is all about the transfer of heat. So we're heating our pan, then we're going to heat our oil, then we are going to add our chicken in. Because if you just turn on your pan, dump in your oil, add your chicken, what's going to happen is it starts heating up all the same time, and you're not going to get that browning on the chicken. And what tends to happen is your oil absorbs into the food you put in. So you tend to have a dry pan, then you're adding more oil, and we don't want to have to deal with that. All right, so our pan is nice and warm. Adding a little bit of olive oil here. And I'm trying a new camera angle today, so you guys have to let me know what you think, so you can kind of see half cutting board, half now into the pan. So letting our olive oil get really warm. And I like to use olive oil because that's what I have on hand. I like to buy the really big container because it's more cost effective that way. But you can use canola oil here. You can use avocado oil here, whatever really floats your boat. But I'm looking for a heart healthy option. So using those unsaturated fats. All right, I'm going to add in our chicken. And if you can hear, that sizzle is what we are looking for. So what I like to say is if you waited for your pan to heat and you hear that sizzle, that is your applause for waiting and being patient to letting your pan get nice and warm. So I'm just going to leave that there, and we're going to start prepping for the remainder of our recipe. So that's going to take a little while to cook. And we are going to move on to cutting our onions. So some shortcuts to meal prepping and meal planning. If you don't want to spend time prepping, buy stuff that's already done for you. If you can, oftentimes they are a little bit more expensive, but if saving time is your end goal here and you can afford the pre-chopped onions, go for it. You can buy frozen ones, you can buy those fresh ones too. So again, the way I like to chop my onion is we're always keeping this root end intact. And I'm going to slice through here. And we always want to create a nice flat surface on our cutting board. Now I'm cutting off the one end, keeping again our root end intact. And I'm just going to give it a nice little feel. I have always a garbage little bowl right next to me. It helps you become more efficient in the kitchen. And sometimes your peels are going to be annoying and stick to your onion. So I kind of just use my knife a little bit to help slide it off. If you are into saving all of your scraps, save all the ends of your onion, your carrots, your celery. And I have a Ziploc freezer bag in the freezer where I'll just keep accumulating all my scraps, the ends, the stems, the peels. And eventually, once that bag is full, you can make your own broth. Now, some people don't want to do that, totally fine. But if you would like to save some of your scraps, go for it. All right, so let's go back to our method of cutting our onion. So this is my favorite method. Just gonna give our chicken a stir real quick. And a little tip about our chicken or any protein that we're cooking on the stovetop. If it does not want to budge, it is not ready to be tossed or flipped. People have a habit of overdoing it. Just move it around, and now we're just going to let it cook again. So back to our onion technique. The goal here is to make cutting and knife skills as easy as possible, so you're more efficient in the kitchen. We keep this root end intact because when we're cutting, everything is connected to that root end here. So if you slice that off, then pieces of your onion are going to start falling all over your cutting board. And that's not what we're looking for. So essentially, we are going to create a grid onto one half of our onion. So first, we are going to hold our knife horizontally, and my hand stands up here, so I'm protecting my fingertips. And I'm going to let my knife do the work and slide through, and I'm not going all the way through. Also see that I'm not hacking away at it. If your knife is sharp, which it should be, it should do the work for you and it should just slide right through. So now we have levels. And depending on how small or big you want your dice to be would be determining how many levels you want to cut. So now you turn it facing you and the root end away from you. And I'm doing the tip of my knife down into the onion, and now essentially we created a grid. So I lost them along the way, but that's okay. They're in that perfect little dice anyway. So we have a grid here. And next up, we just curling my fingers in, we are slicing down. And again, you're letting your knife do the work for you. And now you have a perfect little dice. So I hope everyone starts working on their knife skills because that's how you get more efficient in the kitchen. Giving our chicken another little turn. Any of the pieces that I see that are still a little pink on the one side, I'm just gonna flip over manually. Okay. And we're going to repeat. So again, if you want to save some time, I think it's great if you can use the ready chopped onion for you. And if you see, the more you do it, the easier it gets and the more efficient you get at it. So we are just going to put our onion to the side. So a lot of times I like to mise en place before I start even any cooking. And if you remember from last class, mise en place, does anyone remember what it means? It means to have everything in its place. But this recipe is a building and progressing into one pan. So we have some time as things are cooking to do some of the chopping and the mise en place. All right, give this one more. So turn here. Next up is our garlic. This recipe calls for 4. I'm using like 5 pretty big cloves of garlic because I just love garlic. Again, this is where a recipe is just a guide. It's not a mandate. So as you remember, if you're new here, this is what I like to do. Your knife is always away from you. The sharp end is away. And you don't have to go crazy and bang it. What you just want to do is apply enough pressure to hear a little crack, and then it's easy to peel right off. You might have this like little woody ends that I'm going to trim off. We're going to do that for all of our garlic. Oh, that one has actually 2 in here. So I'm going to add 6 cloves of garlic, guys. I love garlic. Same thing when it comes to getting ready to prep and buying pre-chopped items. No shame in buying the pre-chopped garlic. I even use that at home sometimes. But just know that oftentimes that the pre-chopped loses its flavor. So when a recipe calls for about like a couple of cloves, you would need to add maybe a little more than it recommends. And about 1 clove of garlic is about 1 teaspoon chopped. So that's how you can remember or convert your recipe if it calls for like 4 cloves of garlic. Do 4 teaspoons of your already minced garlic. All right. So to start off, we just want to slice each piece here. And as you see, my knife never leaves the cutting board. It's this nice, fluid, rocking motion. And what I often see a lot in my hands-on cooking classes, we're not using the knife efficiently. We're often using only like the top of the knife here or just the bottom. You want your knife to go through that item, whatever you're slicing, and let it really do the work for you. All right, let me just check on my chicken real quick. All right, almost done here. So then once we have our slice, this is what I call the rocking or the fan motion. You're doing this rocking motion. So the tip of your knife should stay down on your cutting board. You can do it with the palm of your hand or your fingertips. And you're just going to move your knife back and forth like a fan motion. And just gather it again. And keep going. So the finer you chop your garlic, the more intense flavor it will be. So that can be a decision if you want a more mellow or you want more of an intense flavor of your garlic. All right. So if anyone is cooking along with me, are we kind of at the same steps here? All right. Oh, I love garlic so much. All right, so my chicken is about done. I have a new plate. Obviously, we do not want that cross-contamination. And if you're really unsure, you can temp your chicken. And quiz time, what should the internal temperature of chicken be?
Ooh, I know.
What is it?
It should be 165, Julie.
Yes, 165. Also, a lot of times people will tell me that using chicken breast, it's going to be too dry, or it is a very lean piece of meat. But think about the other ingredients that we're working with, and it's not just chicken now, they're going to be served like this. It's going to be incorporated into this one pan dish that's going to be adding back a lot of moisture. So this is going to the side. And I'm just going to add a little bit more olive oil to our pan. And our pan is nice and warm already. Just gonna lower it just a touch. And do you see some bits and pieces on the bottom from our chicken? Does anyone know what that culinary term is called? So that is called the fond. So I'm very fond of fond because it's still adding flavor. We're building flavors in the pan. And this is going to come up a little bit into our onions. So we're still preserving the flavor and building it. So we have our onion here. I like to add a little bit of salt during the saute phase because it's going to help release some of that moisture from the onions to help it cook more evenly. So I'm going to let this go for a little bit. I'm going to push my garlic to the side here because we're going to move on for more prepping of our veggies. So we have 2 stalks of celery. Be honest here, I don't love celery. I don't mind it in soup and a dish like this, but like I'm not putting celery in my salad. So anytime you see a recipe where you have an ingredient like that and don't necessarily want to buy a whole bag of something, hit up the salad bar. We have this really great salad bar at our grocery store where you can just get that little bit that you need for potential recipe. Plus, oftentimes it's already chopped for you. But I have our celery whole here because I wanted to show you this tip. So anytime something is as long as your knife or even longer, you want to break it down a little bit to make it more evenly, to have more even cut pieces. So you could go through and just slice through, but you're less likely to have a perfectly even cut. So we're going to cut these guys in half. And starting with one, we are going to create little planks here. And this is where I want you to practice your knife skills. So only handle what you can at one time. I could have sliced all of these and tried to stack them up, but that's going to be too much. All right, looking good. And you'll see that there's some of like that browning on them. They're not necessarily caramelizing just yet. It's coming from the fond from the chicken, which is good because we're still adding more flavor. All right, I'm gonna actually add my garlic in here now. I'm not gonna stir it yet. I just want some more room on my cutting board. And practicing that rocking motion that your knife never leaves the cutting board. So
I have a question, Julie.
Oh, go ahead.
I was wondering why you didn't add the garlic earlier.
Hold on, I gotta turn up my volume a little bit. My pan is gonna like really sizzly right now. What was that?
I was wondering why you didn't add the garlic earlier.
So if you add the garlic earlier, it will burn. And when you have burnt garlic, it will be bitter. So I wait till my onions are starting to cook down and then I'll add my garlic because also now there will be more moisture in the pan. All right, so let me just chop these guys up. Get these ready to go. I will give them a stir right now. And your garlic only takes about a minute or so after you add it to the pan. It's going to become nice and fragrant. That's when you know that that rawness is done. And it will be that delicious garlic flavor. All right. We're adding in our celery next. And if you think this is cutting really fast, The more you practice, the easier it will get. So now I'm adding in our celery, and this is going to cook down. And we have some button mushrooms that are next. So with your mushroom, you could use cremini mushrooms if you love like more exotic mushrooms. You can use shiitake, really whatever you want. I love mushrooms. I think they're delicious and they provide like a meaty texture to a dish if you're looking for someone who's a big meat eater and wants to incorporate more plants. So the easiest, there's a couple different ways you can cut your onions. We are just going to give them a nice slice. So to make it easy for yourself, again, we want to create a nice flat surface on our cutting board. So what I like to do is pop off the stem. I'll slice the stem just until I get to the end, discard that part, but then you can create a nice flat surface with just the cap and slice through that way. Or you can trim off the woody end, put it upside down, stem up, creating a nice flat surface, cut through. So the really big difference is if you want the stem showing or no stem showing. I really don't care. So to make it easy for myself, I pop off the stem, slice through that, and then slice through my cap. So I'm gonna go all the stems first. And as I'm going, I'm gonna just keep adding them because we are continuing to cook here during the cooking process. And mushrooms are one of the natural sources that contribute to vitamin D. They're actually growing now mushrooms with UV rays so they can absorb some of that vitamin D. And most of our vitamin D is fortified, meaning it's added into our food. So one natural way to get in our vitamin D, especially in the wintertime, we're all inside so much more. We need some of that sunlight. And also even in the summer, when we are getting that sunlight, we're protecting our skin. We're not necessarily getting those UV rays. All right. So mushrooms are going in. What other veggies would you guys potentially add to this? Because the limit does not exist. You could add as many veggies as you want. Any ideas? Could add carrots here.
Maybe some zucchini.
Ooh, zucchini would be nice. Or you can even do zucchini noodles with this, or a combination of spaghetti, squash, and zucchini noodles. I like the color contrast there.
Margaret says black olives.
Ooh, yeah, olives. In our household, though, my husband doesn't love olives, so I always have to add them at the end.
Ooh, Elizabeth says artichoke hearts. Great idea.
What?
Elizabeth says artichoke hearts.
Ooh, that would be fantastic. That or hearts of palm, that would be really good in that. Because especially like the artichoke hearts, it kind of reminds me of like artichoke dip because we're going to be adding that creamy yogurt in there as well. Oh, that sounds really good. All right, my last mushroom, guys. And if you start noticing that your heat is a little too high, just turn it down and adjust as you go. So this is going to cook down a little bit. I'm going to add a touch more salt here just to help with those mushrooms. So another thing I wanted to talk about for our mushrooms is it's funny because you always learn every single day. And when I was in culinary school, I learned to wash your mushrooms by wiping them with a damp paper towel. And that is so tedious. You do one by one, you have to wipe it off, and then it gets sticky on your hands. So a new chef that I started working with, she was telling me how she just like rinses them underwater and then I was like, but aren't they going to absorb all that water? That's what I was taught. So in another class, we kind of had the same discussion. And of course, I have to turn to Alton Brown, who is my favorite culinary guru. And he does all the scientific tests to really make sure or to understand the science of cooking. But you can actually rinse them underwater. As long as they're not staying submerged in that water, you can rinse them, wipe them off, and then they're ready to go. They're not going to absorb that water that we all think they would be. Also, it's just so much easier to do it that way. So next time you are getting annoyed that you have to wipe all your mushrooms, just rinse them under some water. All right, so I'm adding in some herbs, and we are using some dried basil, some dried parsley, and some dried oregano. So I'm adding these on a little bit later in the cooking process because now all of our veggies are cooking down and we want to coat them. And our dried herbs, when we add them to heat during the cooking process, it's called blooming. And it's bringing out that flavor. Because if you just dump them on at the end, it's not going to be as strong of a taste there. So as our mushrooms are still cooking down, let's go ahead and take our spaghetti squash that I already pre-cooked with my fork. And this is the most fun part, especially if you have like little hands helping you in the kitchen. They can help you just take your fork and string out all of these beautiful little strands of spaghetti squash. If you read my tips in the recipe, I shared that my favorite way to help with cutting through the squash is to actually pierce it with a paring knife and pop it in your oven for about 10 minutes or so, just so it is soft enough to cut through, then scoop it out, place it flat down on your baking sheet, and then you're ready to go. Some people like to do that method in the microwave. I've seen a lot of things happen in the kitchen. I've actually seen a squash explode in the microwave. So that's why I prefer the other method. All right, so I'm scraping this out here. And if your squash is kind of watery, because again, it's a vegetable, you can just pat it with a paper towel or like wring it out with a cheesecloth. Just be nice and delicate with it because we don't want to create like a spaghetti squash puree at this point. So at this point, our mushrooms are looking really tender. Smells so good. Adding back our chicken and all those juices in there. And I'm going to add in our spaghetti squash. So again, usually the pasta is a base for this kind of dish, but we are making it very veg forward. Give my hands a little rinse. Going back to my tongs here. I'm gonna move everything around, get everything incorporated, get all the flavors blending together. And to make it creamy, we are going to be adding a little bit of Greek yogurt. So you could use whatever variety of your Greek yogurt here that you enjoy. I am not like a brand snob, so whatever one you like the flavor of or the taste of, go for that. Of course, we're doing a plain flavor here. We're not going to add any like strawberry. I don't think that would really mesh well here. So we're going to incorporate our yogurt. And of course, another favorite ingredient, we're adding some cheese. So this is only 1 cup for the whole dish. And I like to buy or shred it until it's finely grated. I just find that it blends a little bit better. We're using cheddar here. You can easily use really any cheese that you enjoy. What other cheese do you think would mix well with this dish? You do mozzarella. Anything that would melt would work well. So whatever your preference is. Oh my gosh, this smells so good. And that came together so quickly. So if you want to, I'm actually gonna switch this angle and move this over here so you can see the whole dish. So it's one of those combination dishes where everything just gets combined together. So when you have a fork full of it, you're going to get a delicious bite every single time. You're gonna eat the mushroom, you're gonna get the chicken, going to get the spaghetti squash. And this, you can make it a little fancy and you can add a sprinkle of some fresh parsley on top. And again, comes together so quickly. If you wanted to start the meal prep process in advance, you could cook off your spaghetti squash. Just don't string it out and pop it in your fridge, and you can have it ready to go really easily. So another 1-pan meal, because I'm all about quick and delicious meals. It is very veg forward and simple to make. There are a lot of ideas for substitutions here. You can make this dairy-free if you wanted to by just using dairy-free cheese and a dairy-free yogurt. This is naturally gluten-free because we are not using any pasta here. So it's one of these dishes that could really do well for a number of people in your family if people have different dietary needs or likes or preferences. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to Anne because this is one of her recipes from the meal guide and it is so delicious. This is now my 3rd time making it and you can find other recipes on that meal guide. So definitely take advantage of trying that free trial for a month just to get some more recipes in your for dinner ideas and to utilize that technique of meal planning to make your life easier. So just like me, you're not wondering like, oh, what are we having for dinner? I hate that question. So if anyone has any other questions for us, and if you want to throw in your contact information in the chat, feel free to follow her on social media. If you want to follow Virtual Teaching Kitchen, please do. And if you make this, please tag us. I would love to see it. And we have a lot of other fun classes coming up. I will soon be posting our March class, so just stay tuned. And a big thank you for everyone who came. I really appreciate all your support. And we're always here in between classes if you have any questions. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we have a private Facebook group. So if you want to join that, I will send you that link and I'll put it in the email actually that I'll be sending out with the recording. So you can join into that. We can keep the conversation going in between classes. If you have cooking questions, if you have nutrition questions, that's what I'm here for. So definitely keep in touch. Again, thank you, Anne. A big thank you, and especially for offering everyone who registered that free month for the meal plans to get everyone going with that and trying it out. I think that's such a huge help for so many people. And as always, if you have any class ideas or recommendations of nutrition topics, I'm all ears because these classes are meant for you. I want to help you cook in the kitchen, make healthier choices, and we can cook together. So a big thank you again for everyone who tuned in, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.